The small shuttle landed on the alien planet with a soft hiss. Inside, Casey Morgan looked out the window at a world she had never imagined she would see. Crystal towers rose high into the purple sky. Strange machines floated in the air. Everything looked clean and perfect and very, very advanced. Casey was not a scientist. She was not an engineer. She was a blacksmith from Montana, a small state in America where winters were cold and people still valued old skills. Her father had taught her to work metal when she was just a little girl. His father had taught him. And so it went, back 5 generations to a time when horses needed shoes and farmers needed tools. Now she was here, on a planet called Velther Prime, because aliens had asked for her help. The door of the shuttle opened. Casey picked up her old toolkit, the same one her father had used for 40 years. The leather was worn and soft. The tools inside were simple: hammers, tongs, files, things that humans had used for thousands of years. A tall alien waited for her outside. He was almost 8 feet tall, with blue-gray skin that seemed to glow with soft light. He had 4 eyes that looked at her with clear doubt. His name was Consul Drevin, and he did not look happy to see her. "You are the human expert?" Drevin asked. His voice came from a small device on his chest that turned his words into English. "I am a blacksmith," Casey said. She held out her hand in greeting. Dr. Evan did not take it. He looked at her small body, her worn clothes, her old toolkit. The council expected someone more impressive. Casey smiled. It was the same smile her father had used when rich customers looked down on their small shop. "Lead the way, Consul. Your forge master is waiting for me." They walked through the alien city. Everything Casey saw was amazing. Aliens worked with metals, using beams of light and invisible forces. They never touched anything with their hands. Machines did all the work. It was beautiful and perfect and cold. Casey noticed something important. These aliens were engineers, not smiths. They controlled their materials from far away. They never felt the metal under their fingers. They never listened to what it wanted to become. The Grand Forge was a huge building in the center of the city. Inside, Casey saw machines she could not understand. Screens showed numbers and graphs. Force fields held things in the air. It was the most advanced workshop in the galaxy. And in the middle of it all, floating in beams of light, was the reason she had come. The material was black. Blacker than anything Casey had ever seen. It seemed to eat light instead of reflecting it. Purple lines ran through it like veins, glowing softly. Just looking at it made her teeth hurt. "This is void-touched ore," Drevin said. "We found it near a dead star 17 years ago. It is harder than anything we know. It could change everything: ships, weapons, buildings. Nothing could break them. But you cannot work it," Casey said. It was not a question. Before Drevin could answer, an old alien came forward. He was bent with age, his skin dull, his 4 eyes cloudy. But his hands were scarred and rough. Casey knew those hands. They were the hands of someone who had worked with heat and metal all his life. His name was Torvik, and he was the forge master. "For 17 years, I have tried everything," Torvik said. His voice was tired and sad. Plasma cutters that can cut through starship armor. Gravity machines that can crush plants. Energy beams that can burn through anything. Nothing works. He showed Casey videos of the experiments. In every one, the black ore sat unchanged. Fire could not burn it. Pressure could not crush it. Even when they tried to change it at the smallest level, the ore pushed back. "It rejects everything we do," Torvik said. "I have asked every metal worker in the galaxy for help. No one knows what to do. Can you lower those force fields?" Casey asked. "I need to touch it." Drevin made a sound of alarm. "That is not allowed. The ore is dangerous. You need special equipment." "The ore is safe to touch," Torvak said quietly. I have touched it many times. He looked at Casey with new interest. Why do you want to touch it? Casey held up her hands. They were covered with small scars and thick calluses from years of work. My father taught me that you cannot understand metal until you feel it. Metal remembers things. It remembers the earth it came from. It remembers the fire that shaped it. You have to listen. That is not science, Drevin said. Maybe not. Casey shrugged. But I have watched your videos. You have been trying to force this material to obey. You treat it like an enemy. Has anyone tried to understand what it wants? Torvak was quiet for a long time. Then he lowered the force fields. The black ore floated down to rest on a table. Casey walked toward it slowly, with respect. She took off her gloves and reached out with her bare hands. The moment she touched the surface, she understood. The ore was not fighting them. It was hungry. All those experiments, all that energy, the ore had been drinking it in, storing it. It was not rejecting their work. It was feeding on it. And deep inside, Casey felt something she knew very well. A pattern, a structure, something that reminded her of long winter nights in her father's shop. Forge Master Torvak, she said, her eyes still closed. How cold is this ore right now? Torvak checked his machines. Very cold. About -200 degrees. The ore is naturally cold, so we have been trying to heat it. Casey laughed out loud. Everyone in the room stared at her. That is your problem, she said. You have been trying to add heat. But this material does not want heat. It wants cold. She turned to face the two aliens. Her eyes were bright with excitement. This is not like your metals. The closest thing we have on Earth is obsidian. Volcanic glass. And obsidian is not worked with heat. You shape it with careful breaking. You hit it just right to split it along natural lines. And then you make it stronger with cold. Cold tempering? Torvak stepped forward. I have never heard of this. It is not common even on Earth, but my dad used to do it. He grew up in Alaska, where it is very cold. The native people there had been working obsidian for thousands of years. They would shape their blades in summer, then bury them in frozen ground all winter. The slow cold would make the material stronger. She pressed both hands flat against the ore. This material wants the same thing, but much more. It came from a dead star, a place of absolute cold. That is its home. That is what it remembers. You want us to freeze it? Torvak asked. I want us to freeze it to almost absolute zero. Then we work it with simple force. No plasma, no energy beams, no gravity machines. Just cold and pressure, the way my dad used to do it at home. The room was silent. Then Torvak began to laugh. It was a dusty, old sound, like he had not laughed in many years. 17 years, he said, shaking his head. 17 years of the most advanced technology in the galaxy. And the answer is to freeze it and hit it with a hammer. Sometimes the old ways work best, Casey said. Now show me your freezing machines. I have a material to meet properly. Drevin still looked doubtful. Torvak still looked amazed. But they both led her deeper into the forge, toward machines that could create cold beyond anything on Earth. Casey followed them, her old toolkit in her hand, ready to do what her family had done for 5 generations. She was going to work some metal. The freezing room was the coldest place in the known galaxy. Giant machines hummed and glowed as they pushed temperatures down to almost absolute zero. Nothing could be colder than this. Not space. Not the void between stars. Only here, in this room, could the universe become truly still. Casey stood before the observation window, watching as the chunk of black ore was lowered into the chamber. 3 days had passed since she arrived. 3 days of arguments and preparations and changes to machines that had never been used this way before. Drevin had fought her at every step. He talked about safety rules and old laws and proper ways of doing things. But Torvak had supported her each time. The old Forge Master had not felt hope in many years. Now he felt it again. "Temperature is almost there," a Veltri worker said. "We are very close to absolute zero." Casey watched the ore through the sensors. The purple lines that had always moved and pulsed were becoming still. Their light was softer now. Frost patterns spread across the black surface like flowers made of ice. "It is calming down," Casey said quietly. "It is finally comfortable." "The energy readings are changing," Torvik said from his station. "All that power it took from our experiments is settling down, like dirt sinking to the bottom of water." Casey nodded. It needed rest. All that energy you poured into it made the ore confused and scared. It did not know what to do, so it defended itself. Now it feels safe. "You talk about it like it is alive," Drevin said. "Everything is alive in its own way. Every material has a nature, a way it wants to exist. You just have to learn to listen." She began putting on her special suit. The aliens had made it for her, based on her instructions. It would protect her body from the terrible cold. Heating elements in the gloves would keep her hands working. But the actual tools were her own. Her father's hammers. Her father's chisels. Things made of simple steel that had worked metal for 50 years. "I still do not understand," Drevin said. "Even if this works, it will be very hard. Our gravity machines could push with millions of times more force than your little hammers. And the ore would fight them, just like it fought everything else." Casey picked up a hammer and felt its weight. This is not about force. It is about talking. She stepped into the airlock and waited for the doors to close. Through the inner window, she could see the ore sitting on its platform. Mist floated around it from gases becoming liquid in the cold. The ore looked different now. Less angry. Almost friendly. The inner door opened. Casey walked into cold so deep it seemed to have weight. Even with her suit, she could feel it pressing on her from all sides. It should have been terrifying. Instead, she felt peaceful. She walked toward the ore slowly, with respect. Up close, she could see details the sensors missed. Tiny lines and patterns in the surface. A history written in stone older than Earth itself. "Hello," she said softly. No one could hear her through her helmet. "My name is Casey. I know people have hurt you before. They did not mean to. They just did not know how to listen. I am sorry for that." She reached out and put her hand on the ore's surface. Even through her glove, she felt it. The ore was different now. Its inner structure was open and relaxed. It was not defending itself anymore. The stored energy inside was calm and patient, waiting. "I am going to try something," she continued. "It might feel strange, but I promise I will not hurt you. I just want to help you become what you were meant to be." She raised her hammer. She placed her chisel against a line she could feel but not see. And she struck. The sound that rang through the chamber was unlike anything she had ever heard. A pure, clean note that made her bones shake and her heart skip. The ore split perfectly along the line she had chosen. Two pieces fell apart, both glowing with inner light. "The readings are going crazy," Torvak's voice crackled through her helmet speaker. "The material is responding. The inner structure is changing itself." Casey smiled and struck again. For hours she worked. She lost herself in the rhythm of hammer and chisel. The ore guided her, showing her where to strike, where its natural breaking points waited. She was not forcing it into shape. She was helping it find the shape that had always been hidden inside. The aliens watched in silence. Their machines recorded data they did not yet understand. Torvak's old fingers moved across his controls, tracking every change. Drevin stood still, his glowing skin showing colors that Casey could not read. When she finally came out of the freezing room, Casey had made 3 rough shapes from the ore. Each one glowed with soft purple light. Each one hummed with energy that was now organized and calm. "That," she said, pulling off her helmet, "is how you work void-touched ore." Torvik came close to the airlock, staring at what she had made. "The material is completely different now. The structure is ordered, stable. The energy is not random anymore. It follows patterns. It is tempered," Casey said. "Or starting to be. The real work comes next." "What is the real work?" Casey grinned. She was tired but happy. "Now we let it rest in the cold for a while. Then we do it again. And again. Until the ore tells us it is ready. How long will that take?" "As long as it takes. You cannot rush good work. My father used to say that the best blades are not made by the smith. They are made by the steel. We just helped them along." Torvik was quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, he bowed to her. It was a gesture of deep respect that Casey had never seen an alien make to a human. "I have worked metal for 300 years, he said. "I thought I understood it. I thought I was a master. But you have shown me that I was only touching the surface." "You were trying to be a master," Casey said gently. "Sometimes you have to be a student first." Over the next weeks, they developed a routine. Casey would work the ore in the freezing room. Then she would let it rest. Then she would work it again. Each time, the shapes became more refined. Each time, the ore became more cooperative. The 3 rough shapes slowly became beautiful things. One was becoming a curved blade, its edge already sharp enough to cut light. Another was becoming a shield, flat and strong and hungry for impact. The third was becoming something Casey did not yet understand, but the ore knew what it wanted to be. Word began to spread across the alien worlds. A human blacksmith had done what the greatest minds in the galaxy could not. She had used tools older than spaceflight. She had talked to material instead of fighting it. And she had scientists sent messages asking to watch. Engineers demanded explanations. Politicians argued about what it all meant. Casey ignored most of it. She had work to do, but one message she could not ignore came directly to her personal device. "My name is Admiral Vex," the recording said. A Velthari in military clothes appeared on screen. His glowing skin was cold blue, the color of authority. "I represent the Galactic Defense Coalition. We have been watching your progress with great interest." Casey watched the message in her room, eating dinner. The alien food was not very good, but it kept her alive. "The void-touched ore was always meant for military use," the Admiral continued. "Its properties make it perfect for ship armor and weapons. Your success has big meaning for galaxy security." Casey put down her food. She was no longer hungry. "We want to speed up the project. With proper resources, we could start mass production within 3 years. I will arrive at the forge next week to discuss terms." The message ended. Casey stared at the blank screen for a long time. Then she deleted the message and went back to the forge. Torvik was waiting for her. He looked up as she entered. Something in his face told her he had received a similar message. "The Admiral," she said. "The Admiral," he agreed. "He has been pushing the Council for access since you arrived. Your success has made him more demanding." "What does the Council say?" "The Council debates. They consider. They form committees." Torvik's skin flickered with frustration. "They will give him what he wants eventually. The military always gets what it wants." Casey walked to her workbench. The curved blade sat there, almost finished. A few more cycles, and she could complete the final tempering. It was beautiful. It flowed like frozen water. Its edge promised impossible sharpness. "What do you think the ore wants?" she asked. "I do not understand. You have watched me work. You have seen how the material guides the shaping. Do you think it wants to be mass-produced? Stamped into copies and put on warships? Torvek was silent. What the ore wants matters less than what the powerful want. That has always been true, but it does not have to be. Perhaps not on your world. Here, power flows in certain ways. People can swim against it for a while, but the current always wins. Casey picked up her hammer. My father told me a story once about the first blacksmiths on Earth. Kings and generals would come to them, wanting weapons for their wars. The smiths would make them because they had to survive. But they always kept the best for themselves. The blades that took years to make. The ones with all their secrets. Those never went to war. A nice story. But what good did their secret blades do? The kings still fought. The generals still won. Maybe, but the knowledge survived. The skills passed down, generation to generation. When the kings and generals were dust, the smith's children were still making beautiful things. Torvik made a sound that might have been a laugh. You are either very wise or very foolish, Casey Morgan. I cannot decide which. The nights on Velther Prime were long. 3 moons crossed the purple sky, casting strange shadows through the windows of the forge. Casey and Torvak worked through those nights, teaching and learning, sharing secrets that their peoples had kept for centuries. Torvak showed her how Velthery metal workers use gravity fields to shape alloys at the atomic level. He explained the mathematics of crystal structures and the physics of molecular bonds. He taught her to read the energy signatures that his instruments detected, to understand what was happening inside materials that human eyes could never see. In return, Casey taught him about fire and hammer. She showed him how to feel the temperature of metal by its color. She explained how steel changes when you heat it and cool it, how the same piece of iron can become soft or hard depending on how you treat it. She taught him that working metal is not just science, but also art. Your people have forgotten something important, Casey said one night. They were sitting in the observation room, drinking hot tea that tasted like flowers. You have so much technology that you stopped touching things. We touch things, Torvik said. No, your machines touch things. You watch from far away. You control from a distance. She held up her scarred hands. These scars are not accidents. They are lessons. Every burn taught me something about heat. Every cut taught me something about edges. You cannot learn those lessons through a screen. Torvik looked at his own hands. They were scarred too, from the early days of his career, before the advanced safety systems. I had forgotten what those scars meant, he said quietly. They mean you were brave enough to get close. Brave enough to make mistakes. Brave enough to learn. The old forge master was quiet for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was different. Softer. More honest. I was young when I first touched metal, he said. Really touched it with my bare hands. It was hot, just out of the furnace. I should have waited for the cooling systems. But I was curious. I wanted to know what it felt like. What did it feel like? Alive. Torvak's skin glowed with colors. Casey had learned meant memory and emotion. It felt alive. Like it was breathing. Like it had a heartbeat. I burned my fingers badly. But I never forgot that feeling. That feeling is why we do this, Casey said. Not for money or power or military contracts. We do it because metal is alive, and we are the ones who help it become what it wants to be. The young ones do not understand that anymore. They see metalwork as engineering. Problems to solve. Equations to balance. Torvik shook his head. They have never felt metal breathe. Then we need to teach them. How? The academies do not value such things. The council does not fund research into feelings. Casey smiled. We start small. One student at a time. We find the ones who are curious. The ones who want to touch things instead of controlling them from far away. We teach them the old ways alongside the new. It would take generations to change how we think about metal. Good things take time. My father used to say that patience is the most important tool in a smith's kit. More important than any hammer or furnace. Torvak made the sound that Casey had learned was Valtteri laughter. Your father said many wise things. He did. I did not appreciate them when he was alive. I was too busy wanting to be modern, to use new machines, to make things faster. Casey's voice became sad. He died 2 years ago. I was not there. I was at a conference, learning about laser cutting and computer design. He died alone in his forge, working on a simple kitchen knife for a neighbor. I am sorry. Do not be. He died doing what he loved. And when I came home for the funeral, I found that knife. It was the most beautiful thing he had ever made. Simple, perfect, full of everything he had learned in 70 years. She wiped her eyes. That is when I understood. The new ways are not better than the old ways. They are just different. The best smiths use both. They sat in silence for a while, watching the moons cross the sky. Then Casey stood up. Come on. The blade is ready for its final tempering. I want you to help me. They went together to the freezing room. The curved blade sat in its special holder, glowing softly in the cold mist. It had been through dozens of cycles now. Each time, Casey had worked it a little more, refined its shape, listened to what it wanted to become. What do you want me to do? Torvik asked. Put your hands on it. Feel what I feel. I have not touched raw material in over 100 years. Then it is time to remember. Torvik removed his gloves slowly. His old hands trembled slightly as he reached toward the blade. When his fingers touched the cold surface, his whole body went still. I feel it, he whispered. The energy inside. The patterns. It is like music. It is music. The music of the material. Every piece has its own song. Casey placed her hands next to his. Now listen to what it wants. They stood together in the freezing chamber, two smiths from different worlds, feeling the same ancient song that all metalworkers had heard since the beginning of time. The ore pulsed gently under their fingers, sharing its secrets, showing them what it could become. It wants to protect, Torvik said, his voice full of wonder. Not attack, protect. Yes, it remembers the dead star it came from. A star that protected its planets with warmth and light until its last moment. The ore carries that memory, that purpose. Then why would the Admiral want to make weapons from it? Because he does not listen. He sees material, not memory. Resources, not purpose. Casey pulled her hands back. But we know better now. And we can show him. The final tempering took 3 days. Casey worked the blade with more care than she had ever used before. Torvak watched and learned, asking questions, taking notes, beginning to understand the art that his people had forgotten. When it was done, the blade was a thing of impossible beauty. 3 feet of curved perfection, its edge so fine it seemed to cut the light that touched it. The purple veins that had once moved wildly now flowed in precise patterns along its length. They formed shapes that looked almost like writing. What did those symbols mean? Torvik asked. I do not know. The ore made them, not me. Casey traced one of the patterns with her finger. Maybe someday we will learn to read them. Maybe they are the ore's own language. The handle was Casey's own design. She had made it from a mix of Valtteri materials and earth leather, blending 2 traditions into something new. It felt good in her hand, balanced and light. We should test it, Torvik said. Not yet. First, I need to know something. Casey held the blade up to the light. I need to know if it will accept me. Accept you? The ore is not just material anymore. We have shaped it, but it has shaped itself too. It has memories and purposes and maybe even choices. I need to know if it chooses me." She closed her eyes and reached out with her mind, the way her father had taught her to feel metal. She asked the blade a silent question, not with words but with intention. "Will you work with me? Will you trust me?" For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, the purple patterns along the blade began to glow brighter. The hum that had always come from the ore changed its tone, becoming warmer, more welcoming. Casey opened her eyes and smiled. "It says yes. How do you know?" "I just know. The same way you knew that metal was alive when you touched it as a young man. Some things cannot be measured by instruments. They can only be felt." Torvik looked at the blade with new eyes. "This changes everything. If the material can choose its wielder, then it cannot be mass-produced. Each piece would need its own relationship with its user." "Exactly. And that is what we need to show the Admiral." A warning light flashed on the wall. Dreven's voice came through the speakers. "Forge Master Torvik. The Admiral's fleet has entered orbit. He will arrive at the complex within the hour." Casey and Torvik looked at each other. "Are you ready?" the old Forge Master asked. "No." Casey lifted the blade, feeling its weight, its warmth, its trust. "But the ore is, and that is what matters." They left the freezing room together, carrying the blade that would change the future of the galaxy. Behind them, the machines continued their work, keeping the cold chambers at perfect temperature, waiting for the next piece of ore to be shaped. The purple moons were setting. Dawn was coming to Velther Prime. And with it came the Admiral. Admiral Vex arrived with a show of power. 6 military ships circled the planet. Dozens of soldiers and officers followed him through the forge complex like a parade. His skin glowed with cold blue light, the color of command. His 4 eyes looked at everything like he was already making plans to take it. Casey met him in the main forge chamber. She stood between Torvik and Dreven. She had not changed her clothes or cleaned up for the visit. She wore her working apron and her sturdy boots. If the Admiral wanted to see who she was, she would show him exactly that. Ms. Morgan. The Admiral's translator made his voice sharp and military. "Your work is done better than we hoped. The Council speaks highly of you." "Thank you, Admiral. The ore has been helpful, indeed." His eyes moved to the freezing chamber where the finished blade waited behind protective glass. "I hear you have finished a test piece. Something we can study. Something like that." "Good. We brought testing machines to measure its properties. If it works as we expect, we can start planning for mass production within the month." Casey looked at Torvik. The old Forge Master's skin was carefully blank, but she could see the tension in his body. "Before we do tests," she said, "I think you need to understand something about this material. I know all about its properties, Ms. Morgan. Extreme hardness, energy absorption, resistance to all known forces. Not its properties. Its nature." The Admiral's expression did not change. "Explain." Casey walked to the controls of the freezing chamber. She entered the codes to lower the protective glass. The void-touched ore is not just a resource. It is not raw material waiting to be shaped into whatever we want. It has its own nature, its own preferences, its own will. You talk about it like it can think. Not think. Not exactly. But it is aware in its own way. Aware of what it is and what it wants to become. The glass lowered. The blade was revealed. It was the most beautiful thing Casey had ever made. 3 feet of curved perfection. Its edge was so fine it seemed to cut the light around it. The purple veins flowed along its length in patterns that looked like writing. The handle was a blend of alien and human materials. Admiral Vex stepped forward. His eyes were fixed on the weapon. "Very nice work. Our scientists will need to examine it carefully. Touch it, Casey said. Excuse me? Put your hand on the blade. Feel what it has become. The Admiral paused. Casey could see him thinking. The soldier in him saw danger. The politician saw appearance and protocol. But curiosity won. He reached out and put his palm flat against the blade. The effect was instant. The Admiral's skin flared bright, then changed through colors Casey had never seen. He showed surprise, then wonder, then something like fear. He pulled his hand back as if the blade had burned him. But the metal was still cold. What was that? He demanded. His calm was broken for the first time. That was the ore showing you what it is, Casey said. Remember all that energy your scientists put into it? All those experiments for 17 years? The ore stored all of it, organized it, gave it purpose. Now it has one. What purpose? Casey picked up the blade. The patterns along its length glowed brighter when she touched it. This blade knows me. It knows my intentions, my values, my understanding of what a weapon should be. It will work for anyone who holds it, but it will only show its true power to someone it trusts. That is foolish. Materials do not have opinions. This one does. Casey set the blade down gently. And here is what that means for your production plans. You cannot mass-produce trust. You cannot stamp it out in a factory. Every piece of void-touched ore will need individual work, shaped by hands that understand it, tempered with patience and respect. And even then, it will choose its own user. Vex's eyes narrowed. You are saying this material cannot be weaponized quickly. I am saying it will not be enslaved. Try to force it into mass production, and it will resist. It will absorb your energy and give you nothing back, just like it did for 17 years. The ore knows the difference between creation and slavery. This is unacceptable. The Coalition put huge resources into getting this material. We have military needs that cannot wait for feelings. For what? For respect? For understanding? Casey stepped closer, meeting the Admiral's 4 eyes without fear. You want weapons. I understand. The galaxy is dangerous. Your people need protection. But you cannot have weapons that are slaves. The ore will not allow it. Then what do you suggest? Train smiths. Real smiths, not engineers. People who understand that materials have memory and nature and will. Build them cold forges and give them time. Let them develop relationships with the ore. Learn its language. Earn its trust. In a generation, maybe 2, you will have weapons unlike anything in the galaxy. Weapons that are partners, not tools. A generation? The Coalition cannot wait a generation. Then you cannot have real void-touched weapons. Not ones that will work as intended. Casey smiled, but there was steel behind it. Those are your options, Admiral. You can try to force this, and you will fail, just like everyone else failed for 17 years. Or you can accept that some things cannot be rushed, that some powers must be earned, not taken. The Admiral stood silent for a long time. Casey could see the battle on his face. Duty against desire. Practicality against ambition. Finally, he turned away. I will report your opinion to the Coalition, he said. His voice was tight and controlled. But do not think this is over, Miss Morgan. There are those who will not accept such limits. I know. There always are. But the ore will outlast them, just like it outlasted everyone who tried to control it before. Casey met his eyes one last time. The question is whether your people want to be partners in what it becomes, or just another failed experiment in its memory. The Admiral left without another word. His soldiers and officers followed. The ships in orbit began moving away. Soon the sky was quiet again. Casey let out a breath she did not know she was holding. Torvak came to stand beside her. His old face showed something that might have been a smile. That was very brave. Or very foolish. Both, probably. Like everything I do, he will come back. With more pressure. More demands. Maybe threats. I know. But he will also think. Some of what I said will stay with him. Casey picked up the blade again. It hummed softly in her hand, warm with approval. Besides, we have time. The ore is patient. It waited millions of years for someone to understand it. It can wait a little longer for the rest of the galaxy to catch up. Drevin approached them. His skin showed colors. Casey had learned meant confusion and thought. I do not understand, he said. You had a chance to become famous, wealthy, powerful. The Admiral would have made you rich beyond measure. Why did you refuse? Because some things are worth more than money. Casey looked around the forge, at the machines and the cold chambers and the tools that had been her home for months. My father worked his whole life in a small shop in Montana. He never became rich. He never became famous. But he made things that mattered, things that lasted, things that people still use today. She held up the blade, letting its light fill the room. This is not about me. It is about what comes next. If we let the military turn this material into factory products, we lose something important. We lose the relationship between smith and steel. We lose the art. We lose the soul. You really believe material has a soul? Drevin asked. I believe everything we create has part of our soul in it. And I believe this ore has been waiting for someone to share souls with. Casey set the blade down and turned to face both aliens. Now, we have work to do. The Admiral will come back, and when he does, I want to show him something he cannot ignore. What? Torvik asked. Students. A dozen beings from different worlds, all learning to work the ore the right way. If we can show that this technique can be taught, that others can develop relationships with the material, then we have an argument the Council cannot dismiss. Where will we find such students? Casey smiled. Leave that to me. I may be from a primitive world, but we have something you Velthari seem to have forgotten. What is that? Social media. By tomorrow morning, every young smith in the galaxy will know what happened here today. And the curious ones, the brave ones, the ones who want to touch things instead of control them from far away, they will find us. She picked up her toolkit and walked toward the door. Where are you going? Torvik called. To make a video. It is time to tell the galaxy that the old ways are not dead. They are just waiting for new hands to learn them. The door closed behind her. Torvik and Drevin looked at each other. She is either going to change everything, Drevin said, or get us all in very deep trouble. Torvik laughed his dusty old laugh. Perhaps both. That seems to be her specialty. In her room, Casey sat before a recording device. She took a deep breath and began to speak. My name is Casey Morgan. I am a blacksmith from Earth, and I am going to tell you the truth about the void-touched ore. 1 year later, Casey stood in a building that had not existed when she first came to Velthar Prime. They called it the Cold Forge now. It was the first training center for what the galaxy had started calling void smiths. 12 students surrounded her. They came from 8 different worlds. Some were tall with many eyes. Some were small with hard shells. One was made of living crystal. Another seemed to be partly made of gas. But they all had one thing in common. They could listen. The ore is not your enemy, Casey told them. It is not your servant. It is your partner. Your job is not to force it into shape. Your job is to find the shape it already wants to be. The students listened with total attention. Casey's video had spread across the galaxy like fire. Millions had watched her explain how she had succeeded where the greatest scientists had failed. Thousands had applied to study with her. She could only accept a few. After the lesson, she found Torvik on the observation deck. He was looking out at the crystal towers of the forge complex. The old forge master moved more slowly these days. His skin glowed less brightly, but his eyes were clearer than ever. "The Admiral sends greetings," Torvik said. "The first Void Smiths will finish their military training next month. He wants you to do the bonding ceremony." I thought he considered me a troublemaker. He does. He also considers you the only person who can make sure the weapons work properly. Torvik's skin flickered with amusement. Politics and practicality make strange partners. Casey nodded. She was watching the distant stars. "How many have applied for the next training group?" 3,000. From 200 worlds. "We can only take about 50. Then we need more buildings. More teachers. More time. Always more time." Casey smiled. "But we have it. The ore is patient." "The ore is patient," Torvik agreed. "As are you. More patient than any human I have ever met. My father taught me. He used to say that the difference between a good smith and a great one is not skill. It is not knowledge. It is patience. The willingness to wait for the metal to tell you when it is ready." He sounds like a wise man. He was. Casey's voice became soft. "He died before I came here. Never saw any of this. But I think he would have understood. This is what he raised me for, even if he did not know it. Every lesson about listening to materials, about respecting the work, about patience and tradition. It all led here. And where does it lead next?" Casey turned from the window. She looked back at the cold forge, where her students were still practicing. Through the glass, she could see the cold chambers glowing with blue light. Pieces of ore waited there for hands patient enough to shape them. "Next, we change everything," she said. "Not with war or force, but with knowledge. We teach the galaxy the materials have souls. That craft has value. That some things cannot be rushed or mass-produced. We show them what humans knew before we ever reached the stars." "And what is that?" Casey grinned. It was the same grin she had worn a year ago, when she first touched the ore and understood its nature. That obsidian is not just volcanic glass. That steel is not just iron and carbon. That everything we work with has a nature that deserves respect. She spread her arms wide, taking in the whole forge complex. "My dad used to temper obsidian at home, in our little shop in Montana. He taught me that every blade has a story. Every material has a memory. The Velthari forgot that somewhere along the way. Most of the galaxy did. But we are going to remind them." Torvik bowed to her. It was the same gesture of respect he had shown a year ago. "Then I am honored to be your student, Casey Morgan of Earth. And I am honored to be yours, Forge Master Torvik of Velthar Prime." She returned the bow. They were teacher and student to each other, partners in work that would outlast them both. "Now come on. We have ore waiting to be shaped. And it is not getting any warmer." They walked back toward the forge together. Behind them, the purple sun rose over the crystal towers dot in the training room. One of the students had made a breakthrough. A young being from a water world had managed to connect with a piece of ore for the first time. The material glowed brightly under her touch, responding to her gentle approach. Casey stopped to watch. The student's face showed the same wonder that Torvik had shown when he remembered touching metal for the first time. The same wonder Casey felt every time the ore accepted her. "You feel it," Casey said to the student. "It is like music," the young one whispered. "Like a song I have always known but never heard. That is the voice of the material. Now listen to what it wants to tell you." The student closed her eyes and focused. The ore pulsed gently, sharing its secrets, beginning the long process of building trust. Casey moved on, checking on other students, offering guidance, answering questions. This was her life now. Not making things alone in a shop, but teaching others to make things. Not one blade at a time, but a whole tradition being born. Admiral Vex had accepted her terms in the end. He had no choice. When Casey's video spread across the galaxy, the public demanded that the ore be treated with respect. Politicians who had supported forced production found themselves unpopular. The council had officially recognized the Cold Forge as the only approved facility for Void Touch work. It was not a complete victory. The military still wanted weapons. The factories still wanted products. There would always be those who saw materials as things to be used, not partners to be respected. But now there was another way. A way that honored the old traditions while using new knowledge. A way that proved humans had something to teach the galaxy, even if their technology was primitive. Casey's students would graduate and return to their worlds. They would build their own cold forges. They would teach their own students. In 100 years, maybe 200, there would be void smiths on every planet. The ore would be worked properly everywhere. And the blades they made would remember. They would carry the memories of their makers, the intentions of their wielders, the purpose that Casey had discovered in that first moment of contact. That evening, Casey sat alone in her quarters. She had a piece of ore in her hands, a small fragment left over from her early experiments. It was not enough to make anything useful, but it was enough to hold, to feel, to remember. "Dad," she said quietly, "I wish you could see this. I wish you could meet Torvak and the students. I wish you could touch the ore and feel what I feel." The fragment glowed softly in response to her voice. It knew her now. It remembered every moment they had spent together. "But I think you would understand. You always said that the most important thing was not what we make. It is what we pass on. The knowledge, the traditions, the respect for materials and craft." She set the fragment on her desk, where it continued to glow like a small night light. "I am passing it on now. To aliens who never knew what a forge was. To beings who forgot that metal can be alive. To a whole galaxy that thought technology was everything." Casey lay down on her bed and closed her eyes. Tomorrow would bring more lessons, more students, more challenges. Admiral Vex would probably send another message with new demands. The council would probably form another committee. The galaxy would keep spinning its complicated political dances, but the ore would remain patient. The Cold Forge would keep teaching. And somewhere, on a planet she would never see, a young smith would touch metal for the first time and discover that it was alive. That was enough. That was everything. In Montana. On Earth, her father's old shop still stood. Casey had arranged for it to be preserved exactly as he left it. The tools hung in their proper places. The forge was cold but clean. The leather apron hung by the door. Someday, she would go back. She would bring her best students with her. She would show them where it all began. Where a man in a small town taught his daughter that the most advanced technology in the universe was patience, and the most important skill was listening. Until then, she would keep working, keep teaching, keep shaping the future of a galaxy, one piece of impossible steel at a time. And the ore, ancient and patient and finally understood, would keep singing its cold, beautiful song.